Welcome back to my channel. I am the Swiftologist, and you are watching my definitive ranking of the relevancy of the best-selling female albums of the 2010s. If you've never been here before, my name is Zach. I make thoughtful pop culture videos. I talk about everything from Lana Del Rey's colorful and incredible discography to Taylor Swift's Encompassing Eras tour, and I even did a 1-hour-long recap of Prince Harry's memoir. So if you like thoughtful pop culture, then this is the place for you. However, if you're new here, I have, a couple of ground rules that I would like to share with you before you go sicko mode in the comment section. So because I talk a lot about the pop girls, I get a lot of, how can I phrase this, brain dead commenters that insist on losing their fucking minds at me in their comment section because I don't like something that they like. Like I said that I skipped the Judah Smith interlude in my reaction to Did You Know That There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard? And the amount of disrespectful, rude, and idiotic comments that I got because I did that, I didn't even say it was bad or that it shouldn't be on the album, I just said I skipped it, was crazy. So if you're gonna come at me crazy or disrespectfully, you will get blocked, so don't try. No one's going to be engaging with you. It will get deleted before anyone can see it. If you disagree with me, I would love to hear why. You can write to your heart's content in my comment section. But if you're rude about it, if you're a bitch about it, you will be escorted from the premises. It's my channel. I make the rules. If you want to talk shit about me, head on over to twitter.com where people do that all day, every day for free, and enjoy, hang out over there. This is for the people who like to have thoughtful, nuanced, analytical conversations about the things that they like. So that's exactly what I'm going to do today. I will admittedly say that this is going to be like a personal ranking. This is not an objective ranking of the best female albums of the 2010s. This is only my opinion. And I have to say that and make that very clear because people, again, as I told you, lose their minds in my comment section. So I'm just warning you that this is my subjective ranking. Now, my methodology for picking this was kind of going through the best-selling albums. So all these albums, I believe, have sold at least 2 million units in the United States alone. So these were the albums that I guess made the biggest commercial penetration. They, reached the most ears, they captured the most listeners. And what I find so interesting about pop music and about pop girls in particular is that intersection between art and commerce. It is very interesting to see how fiscal, monetary, market considerations play into the decision-making process of an artist. Some people who are very hardliners would say that if you make something with the intention to be sold, it is not art at all, but I disagree. I think that there is an artfulness to commerce, to this specific kind of commerce. I feel like sometimes the celebrities that we love, the music that we listen to, the songs that are popular reflect something back at us about our time, about a specific moment in time, right? So like in 2013, we had Blurred Lines and We Can't Stop. Both of those songs said two very specific things about conversations that were going on in popular culture at that time, and they sparked a lot of discourse. And I think the best albums that are representative of their time do that to some extent. Whether or not it holds up or, is kind of timeless or a classic is, a discussion for another day. The categories that I'm going to be ranking everything into are endlessly relevant. So these are going to be the albums that I think we hear reverberations of throughout pop music right now. So albums that maybe were created 5, 6, 7 years ago that still have an enduring impact on artists that are making music currently. And I think this category is going to be hard to sneak into because there aren't so many. Off the top of my head, I can think of a couple, but I think that in general, the whole point of pop music is, again, that it captures that moment in time and the zeitgeist moves on very quickly. So that brings me into my fourth tier, the yellow one, which is aging like milk. So the albums that have not aged well as they've gone on, have become less relevant, have become dated. They sound like they are so specifically from a different time that they are no longer relevant to this day. Under endlessly relevant, I have an iconic moment because sometimes there are really great albums or really big moments that are fun and amazing to look back upon and are good pieces of art, but maybe aren't necessarily endlessly relevant. That's a very high tier to clear. Kind of Nothing is just an album that maybe I don't really understand why it sold that many copies, and there are a few of those in this list. And then we have the Scooter Braun tier, which is the worst. These are the bad albums, the terrible albums that don't deserve to be in the world anymore. I can't think of any that would fall in there, but I just wanted to dunk on Scooter Braun. I wanted to take that opportunity. I only picked the female best-selling albums and English language female best-selling albums. And I also omitted anything that I haven't listened to before because I feel like it's not fair to give my opinion on it if I've never heard it before. So yeah, let's just get straight into it. And remember that if I don't like something that you like, that's okay. The first album that is catching my eye to talk about is 727 by Fifth Harmony. And I'm really torn between putting this in an iconic moment and Kind of Nothing. I think I'm going to put it in Kind of Nothing because Fifth Harmony really only have like two enduring hits, which is Worth It and Work From Home. And I think that in general, they are not an albums artist. And I think if Reflection had snuck its way into the best-selling albums of the 2010s, something else I forgot to mention is that the time period that I'm assessing here is from 2010. So anything that was released or reissued then until about 2019. So anything after that does not make the cut. Before you have a tantrum about your fave being excluded or your favorite album being excluded, that was the criteria. Back to 727. I actually think that 727 was kind of a good album. There were like a couple of really like interesting songs on there. All in My Head Flex is kind of a bop, and Not That Kind of Girl is also a bop. I think that this was maybe kind of a moment album because of all the drama and the kerfuffle that came with it, which actually brings me to the next album that I want to rank, which is Camila Cabello's debut album. And I'm also going to put this in Kind of Nothing because to me, the Camila solo endeavor was like such a hotly anticipated kind of breakthrough, and there was a lot of chatter and talk about how it was going to turn out and how Camila was the obvious star and how, you know, there was so much bad blood between the group in general after her departure. I think I expected so much from Camila because I really liked her when she was in the group. I have definitely kind of cooled on that now as I've heard more of her music. Like, she's fine. I just don't think she's all that. She's not the breakout star, you know? Should have been Normani, but she didn't get the chance. I guess with Camila, the issue that I had with this specific album is that it feels very interfered with. It feels very like overproduced. It feels very like label calculated. She initially announced the title was The Hurting, The Healing, The Loving, and then she kind of doubled back on that and changed it to just a self-titled record. She scrapped the first two singles that she initially put out for this. It had a lot of like false starts, and I feel like when you're making a big statement like that, like she had so much goodwill and attention and hype behind her. I mean, Havana was a great song. There's no denying that. And Never Be the Same is, it's fine. It's interesting. I hate Consequences. I think the writing on this record is really uneven, although I will say She Loves Control is really good, and Into It is also a really good song. However, is there any sort of like lasting legacy from this album? No. Has it influenced pop music at all? No. I just don't think so. Why don't we go with Ariana Grande, Yours Truly? I'm kind of between Nothing and Aging Like Milk. And the reason why is because I think Ariana Grande had this weird kind of like 50s housewife phase when she first entered the public consciousness. And I mean, I guess it fit her voice. She has a very like old school Hollywood voice, but I think that designation was a little bit mature for her at the time, and I think it unnecessarily boxed her in. I do love the song The Way. This is almost like a Disney album. It's not really an adult work. It came out in 2013. I do like the song Tattooed Heart. I think that's a good one. I also like the song Piano, even though it's a little bit immature, I suppose. And Popular Song is really fun. I mean, like, there are a couple of hits on it. I love cheesy bad music in general, so I'm always going to ride for that. But do I think this had any sort of relevancy or impact? No. The only person that it had any sort of relevancy on was Meghan Trainor, and I guess we can talk about that now. Meghan Trainor's album, self-titled, listen, I'm going to put this in Aging Like Milk. I'm going to put this in Aging Like Milk because the message that she came to deliver, which was like some sort of like vague body positivity thing with All About That Bass, and her, again, 50s housewife cosplay, the missives to her future husbands. I mean, I just don't think that this is a contemporary sound. When I hear the songs from this record, it is cringy inducing. There's a reason why Meghan Trainor has a reputation as being like kind of a flop, and I think it's because this image that she crafted of herself was not a very attractive one, and I don't mean that in like a superficial way. I just mean that it's kind of irritating. I have another Meghan Trainor album here too, which is, I think, Thank You. I'm gonna put this in Scooter Braun because it's a flop. Like, what is this album? It has the song No, which I guess was kind of cool. It was trying to start that like 90s revival trend. It had a very like Destiny's Child influenced approach, I suppose. And then we had the song Me Too as well, which is very jarring and annoying. And I think that this song was dated on arrival. Like literally the time that it premiered, it was already like a little bit past the time when it would have been appropriate. I feel like this record would have done really well and been really fitting had it come out in like 2013 or even 2012. But this album came out in like 2016. Like that was we were already on to like the darker, moodier pop vibe. We didn't need more of whatever it was that Meghan was trying to serve us on this. Okay, why don't we talk more about Ariana Grande, Sweetener. I haven't talked a lot about Ari before. Sweetener to me is, I'm going to put it in an iconic moment because I think that No Tears Left to Cry is a truly astounding song. And I think that the visuals and the whole palette that she was coming at with this album was super interesting. And she, did a lot of like genre bending and defying on this record, which again was interesting. I love the song Breathin'. That was really good. Ariana was like super hot off the heels of several traumatic events in her life. She had the Manchester bombings at her concert, and also her longtime boyfriend Mac Miller had passed away. And I think she had a lot of goodwill from the public at that moment because we were all kind of like, well, how much can this young girl endure? And Sweetener was a really good image rehabilitation moment for Ariana as well, because she had certainly developed a reputation for being a diva. A lot of people seem to have forgotten that, but if you dig up the juice on the way that Ariana Grande acted on set, to photographers, to fans, back in the yours truly My Everything days, probably more in the My Everything days. I specifically remember a pretty bad encounter between her and a fan at the 2015 VMAs, I want to say. I think that, she was kind of on a downward slope towards being quite unlikable. She licked the donut, etc., etc. This was a really smart pivot into something lighter, airier, really interesting sounds as well. She was definitely experimenting with more modern pop, which she had kind of started to do on Dangerous Woman, but really leaned into that kind of like more electronic, synthetic production style here, using her vocals as like a production element too. It was very interesting. So I will put it in an iconic moment. Do I think that it's endlessly relevant? I don't know. I want to put an Ariana Grande album up there. I'm not sure which one it's going to be. Okay, why don't we go to Adele, 21. I mean, endlessly relevant. Let's just throw it up there. Adele is kind of undeniable. Her appeal is very singular. It's very for like the moms dropping their kids off at soccer practice. But I think that doesn't detract from the fact that we all felt moved the first time that we heard Someone Like You. It is a genuinely very affecting song, and it's hard to think back now because it's been so memeified, but there was certainly a kind of like more wholesome vein running through pop culture when this record came out in like 2011 or whatever. We had been dealing with a lot of like high bombshell sex appeal from the likes of like Britney and Rihanna and Katy Perry, and Adele coming out with real music. I'm putting that in quotation marks because I wouldn't say that, but Adele coming out with like very singer-songwritery, mature, adult, contemporary pop felt really refreshing and new. And the songwriting on this record is very good. Turning Tables is a great song. Rolling in the Deep is amazing. It's a metaphor that like somehow doesn't really make sense, but Adele's vocal delivery really sells you on whatever it is she's trying to say. Set Fire to the Rain. I mean, there are a lot of modern classics on this, and she was definitely the blueprint, especially for people like Lizzo, actually, coming after her. Lizzo definitely occupies a space that's similar to what Adele does, but she has a little bit more leeway to be silly and fun. I definitely think, however, that Adele opened the general public's palette for a slightly more mature approach to pop songwriting. This one is so random, and I always have people begging me to talk about Melanie Martinez, putting it in Aging Like Milk. The Crybaby album. It was one of the best-selling albums of the 2010s. I couldn't omit it. I have listened to it. Listen, the I'm a Baby shtick is just not for me. I don't think it's smart. I don't think it's interesting. I don't think that it is layered. I think that it's purely aesthetic and in a really shallow way. It's not for me. Okay? It's not for me. If it's for you, that's amazing. The insistence on pretending to be an adult baby for multiple years on end is weird to me. It's strange. I don't like it. I love the song Pity Party. I love that song. That is a great song. It's very catchy. I liked Dollhouse on Tumblr for a while. That album to me has aged like milk. Ultraviolence, Lana Del Rey. Now, do I want to put this in an iconic moment, or do I want to put this in endlessly relevant? With Lana, it's hard. I can already think of 2 Lana albums off the top of my head that have to be endlessly relevant, so I'm just going to put Ultraviolence in an iconic moment. I won't get into it too much because I do have an entire elegy, an entire video essay dedicated to this album, but Loud by Rihanna. Okay, I kind of want to put this in endlessly relevant, but this style of pop music is not really being made anymore, so I'm going to put it in an iconic moment. But I feel like a lot of the younger stans on social media don't understand why Rihanna is such an icon. And Rihanna, like, just has this insane ability to be the main pop girl. I don't know what it is about her, but there was a period of time in the 2010s where Rihanna was literally churning out hits like every fucking 5 seconds. A lot of them are forgettable, but Rihanna went for a, throw everything at the wall and see what sticks approach. And it can't be said that she was not an incredibly hardworking pop star. She just oozes charisma, and she has such a commanding presence on any track that she creates. And this album had a lot of classics. I mean, S&M is cringe. That one definitely has aged like milk. What's My Name? Great. Cheers, drink to that, which samples I'm With You by Avril Lavigne. Yes, please. And the best of all is Only Girl in the World. That is one of my favorite pop songs of the last decade. It is high octane. It is balls to the wall maximalism. It is give me absolutely everything that you've got on the dance floor kind of vibe. And it's definitely very much where we were at in 2011, I think, in the culture. It was very optimistic. We were feeling very progressive. And this song, I think, is an unbridled 4-minute euphoric high. And it hits you, slaps you in the face from the beginning. Like, this is just completely OTT production, and I love it. So for that reason alone, literally just for that one song, I'm going to put it in an iconic moment. Dangerous Woman by Ariana Grande. Now, I think I'm going to have to put this one in endlessly relevant, and let me tell you why. So I think, like, the obvious choice, I suppose, would be to put Thank You Next in endlessly relevant, but I actually think that Thank You Next, I'll get into it when I talk about that record, but it has a different purpose. It fulfilled a different space in the culture. Dangerous Woman, to me, was such an interesting Ariana Grande record in that it was very diverse. She worked with a lot of different producers. She was still definitely stuck between that, like, I'm a soulful balladress and maybe I also want to be like an R&B girl. She definitely started playing with those very Ariana Grande vocalizations, the the hey, the ad-libs, the crazy last 30 seconds of a song where she just goes insane with her vocals. That is a blueprint that has been followed by many an artist. Like, I think that a lot of the current copycat Ariana Grandes, Madison Beer is a good example, are working off of the 2016 Dangerous Woman model. Like, they're going back to the kind of darker, edgier, that latex bunny aesthetic that she came out with. It was a little bit jarring, a little bit shocking, because Ariana was quite cutesy and very much like a teen star before she went in this direction. But even calling the record Dangerous Woman, and I think that this was a last minute pivot as well. This record was supposed to be called Moonlight, if I'm recalling that correctly. But this album, I think, took a lot of people by surprise and really solidified Ariana Grande as a pop girl rather than just like a Disney girl or a teen artist. She had some great songs on this. Justice for Touch It, an amazing song. Not many people know it. It is iconic. Ariana has called it boring herself, but what would she know? Into You is another one of my favorite pop songs of the 2010s, and it definitely falls into that hallowed Robin category of sobbing on the dance floor kind of vibe, that irresistible touch. It is extremely infectious to listen to. We also have Side to Side with Nicki Minaj. I mean, iconic. That was a cultural moment in and of itself. And then the song Dangerous Woman too. And if you think about all those 4 different songs, we've got elements of like rap, we've got R&B, we even have a couple of ballads on that record, and we have this very like strange, powerful guitar riff on Dangerous Woman. So I really appreciated the risks that Ariana took with this record, and if I am remembering this correctly, this was the record that she promoted, toured, and everything without Scooter Braun as her manager. So I'll leave that at that. Up next is Revival by Selena Gomez. Now, is Selena Gomez's music ever endlessly relevant? I love her. I love her music. I think that Selena is definitely a distiller of other kind of pop trends and phenomenons going on in the wider culture. She's really good at figuring out what is good and what fits right now. Am I hearing echoes of Selena in contemporary pop music? I mean, actually, yes, I am. Her whisper singing is something that a lot of other artists have mimicked and followed. And I think a lot of the more kind of banal, just plain old radio hits sound like Selena Gomez. So I'm wondering, do I need to put Revival in endlessly relevant? I mean, Hands to Myself, Good for You. I love that song so much. Same Old Love, Kill 'Em with Kindness. She has a great song on that record called Sober. I'm going to put it in an iconic moment just because I'm not sure that a lot of people are walking into the studio and saying, I want to be Selena Gomez. But For sure, she has an excellent sonic palette. She herself as an artist is a very relevant musician, but I'm not sure that this album is the most relevant, if you know what I mean. Kesha, Animal and Cannibal. I mean, it's aging like milk. I love it so much. I love Kesha. This album was everything to me in middle school. But like, I think this also came out in 2009, but was reissued with the Cannibal side B. Great song on that. Deep cut if you're interested. The Herald song, very good. I think Kesha, it's really unfortunate what happened to Kesha. I mean, just in general, like the Free Kesha movement, all of that. But I mean, as an artist, it seems that, you know, like we just lost our attention span. She really fell out of fashion. The kind of music that she makes is just not stylish or popular anymore. And that makes any sort of like comeback very hard for Kesha. She's been like immediately relegated as a nostalgia artist when she is still like young and like technically should be in the prime of her career. Her last album, The High Road, was really kind of came and went without a bang. I liked Rainbow. However, I don't know that there's still a space in popular culture for the kind of music that Kesha is really good at making. But there was a place downtown where the freaks all came around, and I was there and you were there and we loved it. But unfortunately, this is not aging very well. Adele, 25. Listen, I don't know why this shit sold so much. Adele really, since 21, has been coasting on the hype of that album. I don't think anything she's put out since has been that good as a like cohesive body of work. 25 to me is truly nothing. Like the song Hello is very good. I like the song Water Under the Bridge, but it's really kind of more of the same. Send My Love to Your New Lover is a good song as well. But I don't know, it's not endlessly relevant. It didn't do anything different from what was done on 21. I think that Adele is like actually a very boring artist in that she doesn't really take risks or like try new things very often. And that's because I think what she does is so profitable and it sells so well and it's so easy to do for her that there's kind of no point in branching out. But I would love to see Adele challenge herself at some point, maybe do something a little bit more up tempo. I don't mean that she's got to start making like disco bangers, but it would be interesting to see her try something new. Femme Fatale, Britney. Okay, I don't know. It's hard to talk about Britney knowing everything that we know in hindsight, knowing that she didn't have a lot of agency in the creation of her music, specifically around this time. I'm going to put Femme Fatale in an iconic moment because Britney at this point was like 10 or 11 years into her career, post a very public breakdown. It seemed to everyone at the time that she was kind of getting her life back on track. She was very much like, you know, she had her kids. She was older than the other pop girls that she was like competing with in the arena at that time, and yet she was dominating. She was serving. Britney's delivery of this record was a little bit lackluster, but I think that can be chalked up all the personal strife she was encountering behind the scenes. I think that her team, unfortunately, did a very good job of picking up on what was going on in the culture at that moment, which was that only girl in the world, high octane pop, very overproduced, very auto-tuned. And I think everybody forgets that Britney was like the originator of that style. So it's interesting. Femme Fatale as a record is interesting because it's like her returning, circling back to something she really pioneered, which was the auto-tuned vocal, the very kind of like robotic sounding, monotonous, almost girlish nasal voice, really playing with her voice as a sound effect as well, something that happened a lot on Femme Fatale. The production work on this is stellar. If I'm not wrong, it was Max Martin that did the entire thing. And I mean, perfection. Max Martin always fucking gets a good pop song going. And Britney is, the best thing about Britney is that she is kind of this endlessly blank and malleable character and voice. And she can inhabit so many different like sexy femme fatale-esque personalities. The overall construction of this album was very solid, and I think that it was very successful. And it's very impressive how successful it was given everything else that was going on at the time. So I don't think it's endlessly relevant because again, we're not making music like that anymore, but it was certainly an iconic moment. Beyonce, self-titled. I mean, I'm gonna put this in endlessly relevant, not because of the music. I actually think, like, this is a hot take. I love Beyonce. Before I say this, I love Beyonce. I think that she's great. She is probably our greatest performer, or she is probably our greatest living entertainer. I think her concerts are incredible. Nobody puts on a show like Beyonce. However, I think that her recorded music catalog does not match the caliber and the excellence of her showmanship. And I think, you know, she benefits a lot from the hype cycle. What is really endlessly relevant about the self-titled album is the way that she went about promoting it. Doing a surprise drop was like literally unheard of at that time. And the ability of Beyonce to reinvent the wheel time and time again and really pioneer kind of like new trends and styles in music is super compelling and interesting. I think that self-titled is great. I think that it's a little bit inconsistent. I don't think that it is a great statement as a body of work. I don't really know what it's trying to say. Whereas Lemonade, I think, is an incredible statement, has so much to say. There are so many layers. It's so beautifully considered. But I have to put it there because, you know, the surprise drop is something that all the girls have tried to do. Not all of them can do it to great success, but many of them tried. Okay, up next we have Demi Lovato. Now, there are a couple of Demi Lovato records on this, which shocked me because she has just literally been flopping for the last 5 to 6 years. Tell Me You Love Me. I think this is definitely Demi's best album. I'm going to put this in an iconic moment. It really encompassed a lot of Demi's best skills, which is that kind of like scream shout singing. Demi can serve a ballad, but she can also bang really hard to a bop. And I think a song like Sorry Not Sorry is a great example of Demi using her like pop rock-esque vocals with a modern production style. It's like Sorry Not Sorry was very of the moment, 2017. Like it sounded like what was on the radio. Following on from Cool for the Summer, then she came out with Tell Me You Love Me as the kind of second ballad single, which I think is always a good idea for Demi because the most interesting thing about Demi as an artist is her voice. She has a very distinctive, unique, powerful, strong voice, and that choral gospel element to Tell Me You Love Me is beautiful. There's also a really good song on this record called You Don't Do It For Me Anymore. And in general, I would say Demi is like a horrible albums artist. Like she's not good at making a statement. She's not good at putting together more than 2 or 3 songs that like make any sort of sense as a body of work. And I think that Tell Me You Love Me like really kind of came close to being that for her. So I'm going to put it in an iconic moment. Halcyon Days. I think that this is aging like milk, actually. It was an iconic moment when it came out. The chokehold that Ellie Goulding had over the Tumblr teens was kind of crazy. There was a group of artists, you know, Melanie Martinez, Ellie Goulding, that really, you know, did fall off. Sky Ferreira, my queen, who, for one reason or another fell off, whether it was that they were unable to adapt to the shifting zeitgeist. Ellie Goulding's case, Ellie Goulding kind of started out as an alternative indie artist with her song Lights, and I think that she seemed to be very like unique and independent, and that's what people liked about her. Then when she got signed to a major label, it was like, okay, now I'm going to make a song like Anything Could Happen that will take a lot of my indie electronic production elements and put it into a really big pop song. And I think that she kind of just slowly fell off from there. That kind of went wrong. I think she lost her soul as an artist. I haven't checked out any of her newest stuff, but that reminds me of Delirium, which I truly think is a nothing album. I like that song On My Mind, but I remember when that came out, I was like, I was excited for it. And when it came out, I was like, who is Ellie Goulding? Like, it sounds like I could be listening to any old song by any old person. She just became commercial in a way that made her personality-less, soulless, which is much easier to fall into as a trap as a pop artist than you might think. It's really hard to balance the line between, as I said before, commerce and art. Lana Del Rey, Born to Die, Paradise Edition. Again, I have a whole video on the enduring relevance of Born to Die. Go and check it out if you're interested. The echoes of Lana Del Rey can be felt in pretty much every artist that appeared in the mainstream post 2012. Lorde has a big credit ode to Lana Del Rey. Billie Eilish does too. Many of them will openly acknowledge her. Baroque pop, sad girl, indie girl. It shifted a needle. Something shifted. Talk That Talk by Rihanna. I'm putting this in kind of nothing, but okay, actually, no, I have to put this in an iconic moment. I'm mixing it up with another one of her albums. Rihanna had a stretch of like 3 albums that were a little bit forgettable. Like I said, she was a maximalist. It was throw everything at the wall, which usually meant that a lot of her albums were chock full of filler. And Rihanna filler is better than like a lot of people's, you know, main track pop albums. But some definitely, like Unapologetic, I think is going to be the one I'm going to throw down in Aging Like Milk, or in Kind of Nothing, that just don't have a lot of personality, which Rihanna has a lot to give. It's very easy for her to hand that over. But Talk That Talk is actually very good. We Found Love, Cockiness, Birthday Cake, You to One, Where Have You Been? Rihanna was definitely at the height of her EDM powers here. She realized that collabing with DJs and getting like different kinds of high octane production elements, really following on from that Only Girl in the World theme, would be a successful and easy, simple way for her to keep getting #1 hits. And she definitely followed that template for a long time, to varying degrees of effect, right? But I think that Talk That Talk actually overall was a pretty solid, iconic album. Thank You Next. I'm going to put this in Kind of Nothing. And I think that people are going to lose their minds in the comment section. But hear me out. Thank You Next was a last minute project. Ariana Grande will admit this herself. Not a lot of thought went into it. It happened very spontaneously. There was an interesting origin story to it. It was very of the moment of its time. I remember it being so cool. Thank You Next was a really like incredible moment. I think a lot of people were so interested and intrigued and surprised to hear Ariana, like, again, referencing her personal life, but really directly this time. She was hot off the tails of that highly publicized relationship with Pete Davidson, which nobody could understand. And Thank You Next is a great song. I love that song. That phrase definitely entered popular culture as well. So that makes the song kind of iconic. But the rest of the album is just kind of nothing. There's a beautiful song called Ghostin' on this record, which I really like. Break Up With Your Girlfriend is okay. Seven Rings is kind of embarrassing. That's actually aging like milk. So Thank You Next would put it in iconic moment, but the rest of the album really drags it down for me. I do think that this is very bland. I think that Ariana Grande has more to give. She's more interesting. I think when she works with different producers on one record rather than like kind of the same rotating group of friends, it tends to work out better. So to me, Thank You Next as an album is kind of not really anything juicy to sink my teeth into. Artpop, definitely not endlessly relevant, but I'm gonna put it in iconic moment because, you know, there was the war between Katy Perry and Lady Gaga back in the day. Prism was coming out, Artpop was coming out. We loved to pit successful women against each other, so everyone was kind of gossiping about who would take the number one, as if there could only be one successful main pop girl. And Gaga's elaborate performance art that went into the marketing of this album was a hot fucking mess. It was a hot mess. And it just seemed very over the top. I think in 2013, we were all suffering from Gaga fatigue, especially after, you know, years and years of her doing these increasingly more desperate seeming and like outlandish, wacky and wild attempts at generating conversation. To me, Artpop is like the last great Lady Gaga album. It is super interesting and it's very brash and it's very hard. And when you listen to it, it definitely borrows from a lot of like eclectic alternative music scenes and distills it into a very almost unpalatable pop experience. It's a super interesting, textured, and kind of ridiculous camp album, and I think that that makes it very fun to revisit. I actually don't think that it sounds dated. I'm not sure why. I think maybe it's because hyperpop as a trend in pop music at large is starting to become more mainstream, and so songs like GUI and Donatella are becoming, they just sound like they would be received well today. Applause is a great song. Do What You Want is a great song without the feature. I mean, there's a lot to love and celebrate about Artpop as an album, and I would maybe even go so far as to say that that might be Lady Gaga's best album. But yeah, I'm putting that in an iconic moment because that's exactly what it was. Miley Cyrus bangers, Aging Like Milk. It is aging like milk. The Miley Cyrus fans have already come for me like so many times. Again, even with the latest record, I think, in my opinion, Miley Cyrus is not a very good albums artist. She is not good at creating a project that has a start to finish, cohesive, interesting, and compelling train of thought. Bangers was a success and a hit because of the controversy and the infamy that it generated. I would argue that it didn't do great things for Miley's career. I think that she could have continued to be a successful artist had she not put this out. Wrecking Ball is an okay song. We Can't Stop is a bop, but like We Can't Stop is very dated, and the rest of the album is extremely, extremely forgettable. Some of it is straight up bad. One song I do really like on this is Maybe You're Right. That's a really good song that never really got a fair shake. This veered from camp into just ridiculousness and absurdity in a way that wasn't very interesting or very considered. I think that Miley Cyrus and Her Dead Pets is better than Bangers, but yeah, Bangers to me is Aging Like Milk. Beyonce 4. I was surprised that this is one of the top selling albums because to me, this is kind of nothing, especially coming from Beyonce. Although I will say there are moments on this that are great. Like Love on Top is great. Countdown is great. Run the World Girl, as much as I don't like it, is definitely iconic. I think I'm going to have to shift that into iconic, actually. I'm rethinking this. I think, yeah, there are Love on Top alone was such a moment. Lemonade. Okay. Endlessly relevant for a number of reasons. A really interesting visual project that start to finish, you know, idea of having a film, I think definitely kicked off a trend of artists taking their visuals more seriously and putting together a visual story that makes sense, not just like one-off music videos designed to like make the artist look pretty or to show off, I don't know, some sort of, you know, lavish depiction of wealth or whatever it is. This was a very heartfelt, considered, very produced, but in an extremely detail-oriented way. Beyonce's eye is unmatched. Her ability to, get writers together and ask them to produce their best work under her guidance is very admirable. I don't think Beyonce is a great writer. I think she's an incredible curator, an amazing editor, an incredible producer. She has an eye for visuals like no one else. The layers of reference here, from the inclusions of Maya Angelou's poetry to the gorgeous visuals of the American South, the images of Louisiana and of the police, and the experience of being Black in America, especially being a Black woman in America. It was definitely a moment that was really sorely needed at the time that it came around, and I think it offered people a lot of comfort and a lot of solace. And I think a lot of artists strive to create their lemonade. Like, having your lemonade means you're having your moment of excellence. Carly Rae Jepsen, This Kiss. Okay, I feel kind of crazy, but I'm gonna put this in endlessly relevant, and I'll tell you why. Call Me Maybe was one of the first viral songs, right? Like, it was the first iteration of a TikTok song, a chorus that had an earworm that was so inescapable and so brief that pretty much everyone in the world heard it and had no choice but to hear it over and over and over again. So first kind of viral pop song from a pop girl, in my opinion. Also, Kiss is an interesting album because Carly is playing with a lot of 80s pop in a very kind of direct way, not in a super inspired by, more of a reproduction of. And it definitely has elements of that kind of Rihanna, only girl in the world, pop maximalist thing going on, but there's a retro feel to this, an 80s influence and inspiration that I think ended up being harnessed by so many other artists going on forward. Like Taylor Swift's 1989 was also loosely organized around this theme of being inspired by the 80s as a decade of music. And I think that, that production style is very much relevant, and the idea of having a viral song is super relevant too. So, Emotion did not make it onto this list, by the way. It didn't sell enough copies. But Kiss actually, I guess, is more relevant, even though it's probably the album that people know fewer songs from. Confident, Demi Lovato, Kind of Nothing. Yeah, I'm not even going to waste time on this. I really just don't. I have nothing to say. Dula Peep, the self-titled album. I'm kind of puzzled and stuck on this one because I think that the songs on this are really nothing, but they did kind of grip the general public in a way that was very impactful. I think that Future Nostalgia would for sure be on the endlessly relevant list if it were not made in 2020, so it didn't make the cutoff. But self-titled to me is bland, so I'm just going to put that also in Kind of Nothing. Then we have Demi's self-titled album, which is her best-selling album of all time. Can you believe that? At least from the 2010s. I guess that's based on the fact that Heart Attack is a really good song. There was another song on that record called Something That We're Not that is a great pop song that never even got the single treatment, which is surprising to me. There are a couple of good-ish songs on this. I'm just surprised that it was the most best-selling for Demi. It's not a great sign. I'm definitely putting that in Kind of Nothing. Goodbye Lullaby by Avril Lavigne, Aging Like Milk. I love Avril. I'm an Avril stan. Avril has really struggled since The Best Damn Thing to find a style, theme, and sound that works for her that is also contemporary. Avril has been blessed by the nostalgia-oriented, nostalgia-obsessed, actually, algorithms, because she now doesn't have to try and reinvent herself. She can just kind of access old versions of herself. Love Sucks, her latest album, is super just kind of Avril doing what she does best, rocking out, rocking harder than everyone alive. And that is pretty much all we need to have from Avril. We don't need her to be doing these introspective singer-songwritery moments because she's a very clunky lyric writer, as seen on Goodbye Lullaby. This is also a very confused album because she was forced to tack on songs like What the Hell and Smile because the label was afraid there were no radio hits. But if you dig into the bones of that album, there is not much to discover. Not much. Not aging well. Prism, Katy Perry. I'm also going to put that in Aging Like Milk. It just sounds very dated to me. It sounds very dated. It sounds like it was really trying to be a follow-up to Teenage Dream. And the album that came after Teenage Dream was always going to suffer somehow because of the comparison and because of the excellence of what came before it. Prism to me was all over the place. It was not a very considered album. It seemed a little bit rushed. It came, I think, not that quickly after Teenage Dream, but I don't think Katy Perry had done a lot of personal growth. But Katy Perry's general output post Teenage Dream has not been very good anyway. So Prism, Roar, we have Legendary Lovers. That's kind of a good song. What were the other singles that really endured from that era? Unconditionally? No, everybody forgot that existed. I just don't think that this had anything to offer us. And it succeeded based on the sheer momentum behind Katy Perry for Teenage Dream, and that would soon fall apart. But before we get to the falling apart, let's go through the excellence. Teenage Dream, I mean, endlessly relevant or an iconic moment. Here's the thing. Teenage Dream is one of the best pop albums of the 2010s for sure. 100%. There are so many excellent bulletproof pop songs on there. Max Martin at his very best, Katy Perry giving the performance of a lifetime. But I think that sound is not relevant at the moment right now. I'm not seeing a lot of artists citing Katy Perry as an influence or even hearing songs that harken back to those big bombastic days. Part of the reason why Katy Perry has struggled so much to maintain a presence in the zeitgeist is because we're basically operating on an outdated model of what Katy Perry should sound like, right? She just has not adapted very well to the shifting sales of music, and Katy Perry has always been more about the commerce than the music, and that was what was so impressive about Teenage Dream, was how big it was, how every single managed to go number one, and how she was everywhere and unstoppable, and she had this big tour and this larger than life consumption oriented performance. It was very more. She's on stage, you don't know where to look. There's candies flying everywhere, there's whipped cream, there's a gingerbread man, she's wearing 5 different wigs. It was like a lot. And I don't think that is a currently relevant approach to doing pop music right now. However, don't get me wrong, it is an excellent record. Witness, Aging Like Milk or Kind of Nothing. I'm going to do Witness a Kindness and put it in Kind of Nothing, because I was listening to it the other day, just doing a little bit of research for this video, and there are some okay songs on it. I don't think there's anything really. I like the song Witness the best, actually, and Chained to the Rhythm is a good song. The idea of her doing purposeful pop is not a compelling one to me. Nobody really needs to hear what Katy Perry has to say about politics. It came out at an unfortunate time. She was one of the first pop girls, I think, to release an album like after the Trump era started, and that was always going to be a fraught debate just because tensions were so high everywhere at that time. So nobody really wanted to hear Katy Perry singing about being a California girl, but also nobody wanted to hear Katy Perry's shallow analysis of the problem with politics at large. Like, you've been touring the world in a gingerbread costume for the last 3 years. We don't really need your perspective. Next up, we have Kelly Clarkson, Stronger. This was interesting because it was kind of a renaissance for Kelly Clarkson. My December was not received very well as an album. She had All I Ever Wanted, which was pretty good. It was okay. It had like 2 good songs. Actually, now I'm looking at the track list and there are like 3 songs on this that are actually good. So, and those songs are What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Stronger, Mr. Know-It-All, and Dark Side. I would even say that this is not aging very well. Yeah, it's like, again, an outdated model of pop. If you released any of these songs today, I don't think they would be hits. Lady Gaga, Born This Way. Endlessly relevant or an iconic moment. Born This Way, I mean, did have a little bit of a resurgence with Bloody Mary on TikTok. Great album. I love Born This Way. Again, it has that really kind of like hard, it has like a metal inflection to this record. Super interesting songs, a very interesting era. Some chart cheating going on when she got her #1 there. She used some shiesty tactics to sell her 1 million copies, but Gaga was the moment at the time. It really was an iconic moment to behold Born This Way. And Born This Way had some great pop songs. The song Born This Way itself, rip off of Madonna's Express Yourself, though it may be, is excellent. We also have songs like The Edge of Glory and You and I and Marry the Night. There are a lot of really good songs. I love the weirder, wackier songs on this. Heavy Metal Lover, Government Hooker is a great song. Do I want to put this in Endlessly Relevant? I'm not sure. I'm kind of feeling a little bit like Artpop is in the Endlessly Relevant, given the like hyperpop, the metal inspired, the PC music definitely owes a debt of gratitude, I think, to Artpop. So I'm going to put Artpop in Endlessly Relevant and put Born This Way in an iconic moment. Joanne, Aging Like Milk. Listen, this album sucks. And I'm sure people are going to go crazy at me. I really can't stand that album. There is not one good song on it. It is boring. It is bland. Nobody wanted to see Lady Gaga's return to her fake country roots. You are literally a girl that grew up in New York. You were born on Broadway, baby. Didn't you forget? Where did this come from? It's not authentic, right? Lady Gaga putting on a cowboy hat and going, here we go, is not convincing me that she has any sort of like connection to country music or any sort of real deep affinity for it. It felt like a cosplay, but not even an interesting one. Little Mix, Glory Days. This was one of the albums. I was so excited to see Little Mix in this list. Probably not endlessly relevant, but you know, girl bands really do have to kind of follow the production of the era, of the time, of the moment. They also generally have a lot more product influence than a solo artist. It's not just one person making the decisions. Often the label gets involved. Little Mix has had many battles with their label. Glory Days was such a moment. There were so many great songs from this album, and I feel like Little Mix never get the credit that they're due as pop stars. Like, they are not just a girl group. They are not just winners of the X Factor. They are truly like great performers, and they worked their asses off in this era. We had great songs like Shout Out to My Ex. Touch is one of the best pop songs of the 2010s for sure. Incredible song. We had No More Sad Songs. We had Power. There was a lot of really positive momentum surrounding this record, and I think this lended Little Mix a lot of credibility that they had no chance of getting if they weren't dominating the airwaves like this. And it's a real shame that this album didn't crack America in the way that it should, because it's amazing. So if you haven't gotten on board the Little Mix train, start with Glory Days. It's really good. Lizzo, Cause I Love You. I'm gonna put Cause I Love You in an iconic moment. I don't know that it's endlessly relevant because, again, I think that Lizzo is doing a couple different things. She's doing kind of the SZA thing. She's also doing kind of the Adele thing. It's like a combination of those two, which is a really interesting, unique thing that only Lizzo could do, but I do think it's referential. Lizzo's kind of like an old school entertainer. I think she definitely has like a very soulful element to her performances. She's very uplifting when you watch her, but I don't know that a lot of artists are like following that model of hers. It's really kind of a her thing, which is great, but I just don't think it's endlessly relevant. Melodrama and Pure Heroine. Now I'm gonna have a fight with myself because who goes where? Okay, they're both iconic albums, but who goes into endlessly relevant? I think I'm probably going to put Pure Heroine into endlessly relevant because the angsty teen that has stuff to say about the state of the world is definitely a model that has not gone away. And yes, Lorde was influenced by Lana Del Rey, but this kind of like ingenue, this idea of being like a clairvoyant young person that has like some incredible insight into the happenings of this world that, you know, us older people are like too blind and too jaded to see, is really acute and stirring, and I think it's definitely still present in our contemporary pop stars like Billie Eilish. So yeah, I mean, Melodrama also is a truly incredible album, but like outside of the Lorde heads and pop music fans, I don't think that many people are in touch with this album. It didn't have like a huge commercial success, which is kind of a defining factor of being an endlessly relevant record. So I accidentally just popped it in there. Yeah, I'm gonna put that in an iconic moment. It was iconic for sure. Pink, The Truth About Love. Kind of nothing. I love the song Blow Me One Last Kiss, but like there are certain artists, Pink is one of them, that just veer too much in the product territory. Like, sure, Pink has a couple good songs, but to me it's like Walmart music, you know, it's like Uber music, Lyft music. It's not anything extra special. Anti, Rihanna. Can't put this into endlessly relevant soon enough. Anti is an incredible album, definitely Rihanna's magnum opus. Rihanna could retire and not do another album because of how great this album is front to back as a statement. I definitely slept on it when it first came out. I wasn't really ready to embrace that moodier, more R&B, more kind of like low-key spoken word almost element of Rihanna's style. But once I got into it, oh my God, Kiss It Better is an incredible pop song. Work, super interesting. Love on the Brain, Woo, Higher, Sex with Me. I mean, Rihanna's charisma just continues to prove itself to be an undeniable, irresistible force. And this record is so consistently great from front to back. A true statement. The only Rihanna album I would say that is a true statement. A real display of her artistry, and you know, she had consideration from SZA on there. I mean, I don't think SZA was very happy to part with that song, but Rihanna was very in touch with what was going on in the more kind of like SoundCloud girl, sad girl scene, and she brought that to the mainstream, and I think that that is still super resonant today, and I love that for her. Unapologetic, Rihanna. Yeah, that's going into kind of nothing. Very forgettable by Rihanna standards. Very, very forgettable. Norman fucking Rockwell. I mean, it's endlessly relevant. Lana being able to visit this kind of singer-songwriterdom again at this point in her career, when she has been so known for and so, I guess, beckoned to return to that Born to Die style, that definitely more pop, commercial oriented. The fact that she's able to make music like Norman fucking Rockwell, be a huge commercial success is a feat. And I think it's very inspiring to other artists. And I think that artists really started citing Lana properly as an inspiration and as a generational talent when Norman fucking Rockwell came out. So I think that in the coming years, we're going to see a lot more sleepy, slower, formless, 4-minute plus long songs that will be directly inspired by that. Mark my words, we're going to see it. My everything, Ariana Grande. I'm going to put that in an iconic moment. That was Ariana Grande's like first go at being a real pop star. And it was she seemed like a little deer in the headlights, especially when Problem first came out, but I think she eased into it, settled into it beautifully. Love, One Last Time, Break Free. This is true, also kind of gym music, but Break Free is a great song. CTRL, SZA, endlessly relevant. CTRL or Control, I don't know. Control, I'll call it. Control is like the intersection of Norman fucking Rockwell and Auntie. It is a super influential record that I think just the way that SZA sings, it definitely inspired a bunch of these girlies coming up on TikTok right now. I think, Ice Spice, Doja Cat, they all definitely, I think, were influenced and inspired by SZA. And I think that SZA is such a committed and devoted artist, and she, really practices and hones and is thoughtful and considered. And I just love the storytelling, the vibe. She really created a visual aesthetic that matched the dreaminess of the soundscapes, because the sonic worlds that she created were very complex and very musically challenging. Like the tempo and the kind of like beats that she works with she's very virtuosic. All right, now we're getting into the Taylor Swift of it all. Okay, I can't say that every Taylor Swift album is endlessly relevant, so let me put the ones that I think that were released in the 2010s. Okay. 1989. Endlessly relevant. It is. Come on. It's the blueprint for a big pop blockbuster moment. Post Teenage Dream. Teenage Dream and 1989 are like the blueprints for what an album, what a big pop album looks like. Taylor really, for sure, the way that she promoted this record, the way that she delivered it to the fans, the fan service that she engaged in while promoting this, the ways that she used social media to sell this record were super unique with the secret sessions and going on Tumblr and all of this stuff. She definitely created a new era of fan engagement. And also she had a lot of like leverage and power at this time with streaming. She kept this record off of streaming. She refused to kowtow to that. She definitely used the success of 1989 to further her goals in other areas. And this is a front to back bulletproof album. Sorry, it is. There's like one bad song on it. I'm not going to say which one it is because everyone's going to attack me, but this really is, bulletproof album. Lover, kind of nothing. We all know how I feel about Lover. I don't need to go on my Lover spiel again. For a Taylor Swift album, it's kind of nothing. Red, an iconic moment. I can't say endlessly relevant, even though it's my favorite Taylor Swift album. This is how you know I'm being objective, okay? Red is not going into endlessly relevant. Love Red, it was such a moment, but I think there's another endlessly relevant Taylor Swift album, and this might shock you, but it's Reputation. Yes, it is. It's Reputation. Why? Again, for a very similar reason to 1989. The cultural moment that Reputation was, I mean, to this day, we are still seeing people on TikTok say, I'm in my Reputation era. Like, your Reputation era is synonymous with having the worst time of your life and like rising up from the dead and, slaying again. That is something that not every album can say that it did. The Look What You Made Me Do music video premiere, I mean, it was such a moment. Being as referential as she was to herself and to her career, that was also very new for her. I think that it was a very smart album and that it like borrowed from the trends at of the time, but managed not to veer too heavy in the direction of being so of the moment of the zeitgeist that it became outdated later on. I think Reputation is holding up super well, way better than I expected it to, actually, and very pleased about that. So hate on it. Speak Now, an iconic moment. I could never put her in kind of nothing, but she's definitely not endlessly relevant because she's irrelevant to Taylor Swift. Speak Now is irrelevant to Taylor Swift. She doesn't want to acknowledge it, so I can't be. Okay, last 3 albums that I don't have that much to say about. This is Acting, Sia. I'm going to put this kind of in an iconic moment because Sia like had a moment. Again, she reminds me of Kesha in that like there was a specific time for Sia to rise to the top and she seized upon it and she went all the way. I think this isn't the record with Chandelier, right? This is the one with like Alive and Cheap Thrills. I think this was the album that she put out that was entirely rejects, songs that she'd written for other artists that they had chosen not to take. That was a super interesting conceit for pop music and also kind of lifted the curtain a little bit on how much workshopping goes on behind all of these productions. Like each and every one of these albums was not the artist sat down, wrote it all one day and slapped their picture on it and put it out. Every single album on this list was deeply, carefully considered by multiple people in an organization. So I think that that is very respectable about that album, and it had its moment for sure. Demi Lovato, Unbroken. I'm going to give that iconic moment because Skyscraper is one of Demi's best songs. And there was a lot of intrigue around Demi. This was definitely her entry into being a more adult artist. She was fresh off her first rehab stint. And yeah, Give Your Heart a Break is probably one of her enduring hits. I think that it's not front to back amazing, but it definitely had moments. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think it's that good. I'm going to have to put it in kind of nothing. I was very attached to it when I was a child. Billie Eilish, When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? Endlessly relevant. Listen, I'm not a Billie fan. I'm not really into her music. It's not my thing, but I can absolutely see the deep and profound impact that she's had on pop music, and it will only continue to grow over the next few years. So that's my list. The endlessly relevant albums that I have are 21, Dangerous Woman, Beyonce, Born to Die, Lemonade, This Kiss, Artpop, Pure Heroine, Control, Anti, Norman fucking Rockwell, 1989, Reputation, and When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? That's interesting. Leave me a comment and let me know nicely if you agree or disagree. And if you disagree, I would love to know why nicely. If we were doing a 2020s version, what do we have so far that you think would be in the endlessly relevant category? I am curious to see if you guys liked this video or not, because this was kind of more off the cuff. So if this is interesting to you, let me know. I can do more of them. If you have ideas for like things for me to rank or themes for things to rank, that would be great to share in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my Patreon for more unfiltered conversations about pop culture, patreon.com/swiftologist, and I will see you in the next video.